AJ.
I'm Sunny.
I'm Randy, and this is Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime, a podcast where three hardworking but lazy friends sit down once a week to drink together virtually and discuss true crime. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Why, hello.
Hello.
I feel personally attacked by your descriptors once again.
And I feel so seen.
I feel seen.
I feel so seen.
I want to be lazy, but yet it doesn't work that way.
Your
I'm
brain's
not
not wired that
Responsibility and
way.
anxiety.
I'm just collecting potential energy.
Ooh. Oh.
See?
That's clever. That's
I
clever.
like
Hey,
that.
hashtag science jokes.
Mhm. Mhm. So I have a special guest with me today because Sawyer went to a friend's house recently and they were doing crafts and he came home with this.
I just love it. It's so cute.
Her name is Tentacloe.
She's
and
pink.
she
I love
makes
it.
me
That,
really happy.
For
I
our
think that's your next tattoo.
And what I love is, so my friend, I guess, nudged him in the direction of making this one
Uh-huh.
because she knows, like,
Uh-huh.
pink and tentacled, probably going to be a fan. So
for the listeners not on YouTube, it's a pink octopus made out of pipe cleaners with googly eyes.
it's so cute. She's so cute. Anyway, so I was instructed that I had to, he's like, I'm going to put it in your office, put it on your pencil. And I was like, okay, I will.
So
Yes,
aggressive.
Tentacloe is on my pencil. I have had her all day, so
She's gorgeous.
she's gorgeous.
Love Tentacloe. That's awesome.
Anyway,
Well, we did share a couple of the little interrupter stories before we started recording, and we were laughing pretty hard about that little man.
So now you guys get to laugh.
Mhm.
we all laugh.
Oh,
Isn't that nice? Well, what's not nice is going to be what we're discussing today, or I guess it's nice depending on how creepy you are.
ow, my ear itches. What are we talking about today?
So this may be a case that you all are recently familiar with because there was indeed a mini-series made about it in very recent times. And if you've been listening to us for a long time, this is also something that I very briefly covered probably a year and a half ago, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
Or a little bit longer. But we, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be discussing The Watcher of New Jersey.
I purposely stayed away from this docuseries because I didn't want to like bring it all back to my brain because I knew you were going to cover this again. So it's very fresh to me. I don't remember a lot of details.
Well, you guys are very much, you've always been like true crime junkies. I have been more of a creepypasta kind of person.
That's
Are you
true.
familiar with
Mhm.
creepypasta?
I love creepypasta.
So, you know, like just weird and creepy stories, not necessarily true, but they could be.
Mhm.
And what's crazy about this particular case is that it is true, but it leaves enough creepypasta nonsense to where it intrigued me.
Is it it's a true story?
It is a true story.
Okay.
Yes.
Pasta. I'm
So
hungry.
for those of you that have not done additional research and have only seen the Netflix series, the true story is a little bit different, and that's what I will be covering today. But I'll explain some of the differences between the two as well. But we are going to be starting in very recent times, if you guys are ready to go.
Ready.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, what are we gonna let's just, for if you're just joining us, welcome. If you're a continued listener, thank you so much to our fan base of 10.
Yes.
But what are we drinking?
Oh.
I'm drinking shameful things that is Well, you guys know this one. So I'm drinking my signature fizzy wine,
Awesome.
which is that artificially sweetened, zero sugar, peach stuff mixed with bad red wine. So
I
that's
love
what
it.
I'm drinking currently.
I
It's
currently
like a faux sangria.
Faux sangria.
I currently have a box of red wine in my fridge, which I know is blasphemy, but I'm
Yes.
drinking my vodka.
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 Vodka. And I am drinking, I have a little bit left. I started off with like a glass of wine, but a little bit of Pinot Grigio.
You're like an entire glass of tequila, just like a pint
Well,
of tequila.
okay, so and to be fair, all my wine glasses are dirty. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
So I had these highball glasses and I was like, that'll work.
I'm not gonna lie, AJ, when you're like, I have just a little glass, and I was like, is that tequila? I just have a small shot.
Un poco loco. Just really.
No, I do have a Coke Zero for backup. So
okay.
No Poco Loco.
No Poco Loco.
This is wine. I swear to God, all my wine glasses are mysteriously dirty. Somebody must come in here and drink wine all day long, every day. And I don't know what happened.
You don't use your wine glasses. That's
a case in itself. What creepy
case.
person is coming into your house, drinking your wine and dirtying your wine
and
glasses?
dirtying all my wine glasses. So that's
rude.
That's the story, and I'm sticking
rude.
to it. But I'm glad we're still on brand.
Yeah, we're very on brand.
Vodka.
Hot mess. Here we come.
Wine and vodka.
So we are actually going to be starting in recent times, which is June of 2014. So less than 10 years ago.
That's not recent.
That's totally recent. Shush. I was listening to a song yesterday where I was like, this is pretty new. And it was from 2006 and it was not new. So that was good. So 2014 is recent.
It hurts just a little bit.
It hurts a little bit. We're going from there.
I feel like if it's within 10 years, you can say in the recent. Like, yeah, 10 years, I think, is the cutoff.
All right. So in June of 2014, a man named Derek Brodus, his wife Maria, and their 3 children aged 5, 8, and 10 had just moved into a new house in Westfield, New Jersey. And let me clarify, they had not fully moved in, but they had bought the place and they were starting to move things in. They were getting ready to go. And there was a little bit of work that needed to be done to the house. So they had begun renovations. So as they're there, they are checking on the renovations. They have set up their utilities. They're getting ready to go. They go to check the mail, and there's not much in there because they just are moving in. So there were a few bills and an unexpected white card-shaped envelope. And it was in thick, unfamiliar, slightly old-fashioned handwriting addressed to the new owner. And this was the typed note inside. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. I see that you've already flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Are there more on the way? Do you need to fill the house with the young blood that I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard every day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by every day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin.
They're not even moved in
Signed,
yet.
The Watcher.
That was all one letter.
That was one letter.
And they're not living there yet.
They've just bought it. It is 3 days later.
That's a lot to process.
They received this handwritten letter, and obviously they are terrified.
Yeah.
So Derek, the father, he immediately called the Westfield Police Department. He was asked a lot of questions like, do you have enemies? Do you know who this could have been? Do you have anyone that would have played pranks on you? But they could not find any origin for where this would have happened from someone he knew.
I love how people will say some batshit insane things like that, and the police are like,
"Do you have enemies?
Does somebody think this is a joke? Is this
funny?
No, bitch, this isn't a prank. This is
funny. Look at you."
They counted your children.
So they contacted the previous owners, which were a couple named the Woods. They had actually received a similar note from the Watcher a few days before moving out, but had received absolutely nothing in the previous 23 years that they lived there. And when they received the note, they discounted it as a prank and they threw it away. So nothing more was to come from the investigation with the Woodses, but the Broduses were scared and immediately suspicious of their new neighbors. Mm-hmm. And they spent the next weeks on high alert every time they were around the house. They were staying in a nearby hotel during the renovations, but they received additional letters when they checked the mail. This is another. Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It's been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in each bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to.
Oh.
I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you too are, Brodus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy move-in day. You know I will be watching. Signed, The Watcher.
I'm going to go ahead and board up every fucking window in that house. Like, hey, contractors, you're already here. Just go ahead and get.
If you want to just cover everything with cement and burn it also.
I'll put that for sale sign back up and I'm out. No, thank you. That's 2 letters like that.
Yeah, I don't want none of it.
Again, because the renovations were going on and because they were terrified now, they didn't stop in as frequently. So the letters kept continuing. Another one read, where have you gone to?
I hate you so much.
657 Boulevard is missing you. The town that the Broduses had moved into was idyllic in essentially every other way, mostly filled with wealthy families and missing any crime. The street they moved on to in the town was one of the most desirable. There had been a bit of a bidding war when they were buying the house, so they thought that potentially the Watcher could be a competitor who had bid for the house and lost. But further investigation into the families who had bid showed nothing nefarious. They had bought other houses, they were happy, there was nothing in their background to indicate this was going on. The letters indicated that they came from nearby because they were processed in a distribution center in northern New Jersey. And what was really creepy about the detail that was involved in these letters is the renovations they were doing were not immediately obvious on the outside. And some of the details noted in the notes would have been difficult for a normal passerby to see. You would have had to have very creepy, extraordinary angles to see a lot of the details that were noticed.
Or an internal view.
Or an internal view.
Or maybe he just, I'm picturing an older person for some reason. If he walks past and the contractors are kind of milling about, like, oh, what are you guys doing? Like, oh, we're redoing, this, that, the other inside, just not thinking anything's off.
But like no idea, like no clue who this is, how they're seeing these things. And so again, as said before, they were a little bit suspicious of their new neighbors, partially because they didn't know them. And some of their neighbors were a little odd. One of their neighbors, Peggy Langford, she just came across as strange. So she was in her 90s and she had several adult children living with her that were in their 60s. But even though they investigated and interviewed them, there was no evidence that she or they were involved. They talked about one of her sons, Michael, as being a little bit Boo Radley-esque. So just like a little bit off, like potentially some mental delay. But other than seeming a little strange, he actually would just normally do kind things.
I just got that reference.
Yeah.
All right, that just hit me. Yep. Sorry.
So yeah, the police did some interviews with the family. They turned up with nothing. And at this point, because of their fear, the Broadduses began to become frustrated. And Derek began to become angry with the police, often verbally lashing out. He started to become paranoid and would set up webcams and hide in the dark for hours overnight, waiting and watching and hoping to catch something.
Sounds reasonable.
But never did. They hired a private investigator who staked out the neighborhood and ran background checks, all to no avail. They even reached out to a previous FBI agent who the guy from Silence of the Lambs was based off of. So it was this guy, like really famous guy. And this guy noticed some interesting things about the letters. So it wasn't enough to pinpoint anybody, but he noticed that they included a lot of old-fashioned habits. So a couple examples, instead of putting Mr. and Mrs. or the first and last name, they would put M/M, which was an old way of addressing. And the salutations of the letters often included comments about the weather. Apparently that was a normal thing to like comment on if it was sunny or expecting rain or whatever in the way you began your letters.
Okay.
And I kind of like that. Now I want to just like start all of my emails.
Start your texting like balmy 70
M/M. It's rather drizzly, and as I gaze out the pain, watching it drip down, listening to My Chemical Romance, I often wonder.
Yes.
Oh, so like side note, I was laughing yesterday when we were recording because AJ, you were talking about what happened at your school, and like we were outside. It was 42 degrees and we were freezing. And it's
cold.
Looked at my watch and I was like, it is currently 17 degrees here.
Yeah. We were dying.
It sounds like you're telling time by how cold it is. You're like, well, boy, look at the time. It's 17 degrees. Gotta
run.
Run.
So cold.
17 degrees is miserable. That's uninhabitable.
That's not. No.
Nope.
You start to lose the ability to figure out if it's 17 or 37. Like they just start to feel.
They all feel the same. But okay, we've talked about this, that I think as much crap as you give us, Randy, our range is the same as yours because we can be perfectly comfortable at 115 degrees.
That's true.
I was just going to say, if you put me in anything over 70, I am the biggest asshole. Like, I don't want to do anything. Don't look at me. Don't talk. We're not leaving.
Oh no,
we've got everybody's got a 60-degree comfort range. Ours starts at 115.
Ours starts at 115. Yes. In our bikinis outside for hours.
Love it.
Melting.
If it's anything over 100, I'm Golem in the corner
making
hissing
Pokemon balls.
Nope, I'm hissing at anyone that wants me to go outside.
Okay, AJ. Thank you. I end up with a lot of really ridiculous standlines regularly, and thank you. Yes. Okay. All right.
It's the best thing ever. All right. Sorry, we digress.
Okay. So they're looking at the letters. They're noticing these sort of odd things about them, including the salutations about the weather. And there were also a fair amount of typos and errors where it would say the date, which would include the day of the week, and the day of the week would be wrong. So just like small things, there were a lot of typos, even though they noted that the watcher appeared to be well read because they were fairly verbose in the way that they wrote. So unclear. And the watcher continued to send more letters, mostly upset about the renovations. One of the letters read, "The house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 but roamed its halls does not indicate that they ever lived there.
Yeah.
But they were roaming the halls.
Nope.
But if you were investigating this, wouldn't that immediately tip you off to see who lived there in the past?
You would think, right?
Like immediately investigate that history and go from there. Start there. Here's a great starting point.
Would property records go back that far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
and then you could find birth and death certificates, and you could if you started there, you'd get a lot of information.
So no idea, but yeah, so this guy's like roaming the halls. I'm like, that's not creepy at all. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there, which indicates he did not live there.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Don't love that. The house was full of life and young blood. How many times can you say young blood?
Oh, okay. I was thinking that when you were talking earlier, when he was referencing the children, that to me, that sounds so dehumanizing, the way he's talking about the young, like it's an object.
Then
I kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit.
It's gross. I hate it.
It is. It's gross.
Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. I'm so sorry. I hate it so much.
You ever get that feeling in like your jaw when you're about to throw up where it tingles? That's what I just got.
Yeah. So again, without further suspects, they continued to be suspicious of the odd Langfords, who were the neighbors that were just a bit odd. But further questioning and prompting to the point where they started to complain about harassment continued to reveal nothing. So there was no indication that they were involved, that they were just kind of weird. Other red herrings included 2 sex offenders in the neighborhood and a neighbor who was seen keeping their lawn chairs facing the Brodus's house at all times, which didn't make sense for the view that was available. But they still didn't find anything definitive about them. At this point, they were running out of options, and they had a priest bless the house. Then they installed an alarm system. There's nothing I could do. There's nothing I can do.
That line literally works everywhere.
Father, there's nothing I can do. So they installed an alarm system. And in these few months that had passed, because it had only been a few months of time, they still hadn't moved into the house, and now they were afraid to. They continued to receive more letters. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Come let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. At this point, they stalled the move in further. Good call. Good call. And they went to live with Maria's parents. 6 months in, after they had received the initial letter, they decided to sell.
They hadn't even moved in, right?
They had not even moved in at this point. But as you can imagine, people in that kind of a town talk. Yeah. And so rumors ran rampant about the house, about why it stood empty, even though they had not disclosed the letters to anybody, and the police hadn't talked to anybody about the letters either. But, you know, people were suspicious. And so that made the sale really difficult. The few bids that they did receive came in significantly under asking. Oh. And they were unwilling to disclose the letters unless they had a serious buyer. So 6 months after attempting to sell, they finally ended up filing a legal complaint against the previous owners for not disclosing that initial letter that they had received. So they stalled the move-in, which I think is reasonable. And they went to live with, we talked about that. Yeah. So they went to live with Maria's parents. And then 6 months later, they decided to sell. But again, rumors ran rampant. It made the sale really, really difficult. And the only bids they received came in significantly under asking. They had not shared the letters with anybody, but people were so suspicious that they were, even though it was a very desirable house, they were unwilling to bid at full price. And then 6 months after that, they filed a legal complaint against the Woodses, the previous owners. The legal complaint, even though it was filed, confidentially as one is, a news reporter came across it. And the legal complaint had some snippets from some of the letters. So the Broadduses suddenly found themselves flooded with hundreds of media requests. And in light of the fact that their children were so young and they were trying to be protective, they decided to not speak publicly about any of the things that happened at all. So there's, again, like it hasn't even been that much time. It's been about a year at this point, and they can't sell the house. They don't want to move into it. They're living with Maria's parents, and the police force, I think sometimes in these cases it can get a bad rap, like, oh, they're not trying. But I think this was particularly difficult to solve. They didn't have a lot to go on. And as we know, the police force does not always have unlimited resources to dedicate like the entire force to figuring out one case. So,
well, and I'm sure they had other things on their plate other than just some letters. There's other very serious priorities ahead of that. So it's like, okay, you've got some letters. What do you want us to do?
Yeah. So they're and like they did investigate and they did do interviews and they did do all these things. It just kept revealing nothing. So at this point, a little while later, this guy named Baron Cambly, who was a veteran detective on the force, ended up taking over the case. And he took a little bit of a different tack, which doesn't seem that extraordinary, but apparently it hadn't been done before, is he started looking into DNA.
Okay, that kind of tracks. You're kind of in this golden age of DNA into 2014. Like it's like really hyper focused on DNA.
So after he started investigating from the DNA angle, he found that the DNA on the envelopes belonged to a woman.
Ew.
Shut up.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No. No,
Mhm.
no, no, no,
Mhm.
no, no, no.
So the DNA
Why
belonged
is
to
that so much worse?
it really is.
Why is
Because
that like a million times more offensive and
because
like
the letters are targeting the
appalling?
kids.
Yeah, young blood and
Because it like up to this point, did you have any doubt that it was a man?
no, zero doubts.
Mm-hmm.
Because women don't do, statistically speaking, women don't do crazy shit for no reason. It's for
Not like
profit.
Not like
For
this.
what was it?
Not to this degree.
There's no like, what's the point behind it?
Okay.
Oh, I'm upset.
So yeah, so they wait, I lost it. Okay, there it is. All right. So they found DNA in the envelopes that belonged to a woman, and they kept being suspicious of the Langfords that were, over there. And like at this point, I felt like it was a little bit much. Like they're just kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't
Yeah.
any reason for them to suspect them, but like she was a woman. Again, though, didn't
Okay.
match, didn't work, and so um, they did some additional investigation, and they found that another family on the boulevard had gotten a similar note around the same time that they had gotten their initial note,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't continue to receive letters. So it's a lot of these like, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So the third thing they found
But
as
you
they
would
were,
have additional physical evidence. If it had been reported, you would
yeah,
have another
but it
piece
wasn't.
of oh,
I know
okay.
it wasn't. So they were watching the house. They're trying to figure out what's going on. At one point, the detective saw a car stop suspiciously in front of the house and was able to
Unless it's
trace.
an Uber or a DoorDash, any car that stops slowly in front of a house is suspicious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Again, okay, I'm sorry, this was 2014. My bad.
This was 2014. Well, they had Ubers in 2014, didn't they?
But I mean like deliveries, like Uber Eats, like DoorDash, like Instacart. Like unless you're getting a delivery, a car should not be slowing down in front of your house.
Yeah, and
it
it like
stop.
stopped for quite a while.
Like that is not no. Like that's creepy. No, you don't even answer your doorbell.
They traced this car back to a woman whose boyfriend played a very disturbing video game. I didn't find which one, but some sort of like kind of sadistic, disturbing video game using the name The Watcher.
Get out.
Yeah, you guys are going to be even more mad about what happens next.
It's not him.
So they attempted to interview him multiple times, but he didn't show up. And then that was that for that guy.
That was it.
That was
like, oh, he missed his appointment. There's nothing I could do.
There's nothing I could do.
That's not him.
I slept through my alarm. There's nothing I could do. It was so like again, they kept being like, maybe it's this and nothing, and maybe it's this and it's nothing. And there was never anything that was really founded for them to be able to pin it on any of these suspicious people. And part of the rumors that had swirled around were it was looking at how much they had bought the house for versus the house that they had moved from. So the house they moved into was 6 bedrooms. It was like the nicest boulevard that existed in this very wealthy town. And people were asking the questions of how does somebody go from a $300,000 house to a $1.3 million house in 10 years when the market wasn't hopping that much? And when when they refinance, are they making all of this up because they're trying to get out of a bad investment decision? So a lot of speculation on whether or not any of this was even true.
Mm.
So in spring of 2016, still as the owners of the house.
Have they moved in?
Nope.
Oh.
They put 657 back on the market, hoping that there might be interest at this point as a novelty because the letters were known, people knew the story, and they actually had well-attended open houses, and they spent hours researching all of the people that came in, being like, is this a watcher, comparing handwriting. But every single time that someone expressed interest or put a bid in, they backed out. And it was after they would disclose the letters, people would read them, they'd get freaked out, and every single person backed out of their bid. So at this point, they were hoping to maybe sell the house to a developer who could just ground the whole thing, put something else on there. But there was a planning board that needed to be involved because of the type of city that it was in, neighborhood it was in. And it ended up where they were not allowed to do that. So finally,
if they had enough money, they'd be allowed.
No, there it is.
So after the planning board's decision, finally the Broadduses got a little bit of hope. A family with grown children and 2 big dogs had agreed to rent the house from them. And the renter said that they were not worried about the watcher. And there was an agreement made between the renters and the Broadduses saying that if another letter showed up, they would be allowed out of the lease.
Fair.
Then I guess they had some issues with squirrels in the roof. So Derek had gone. It was squirrels the whole time. That's who was involved. But
just their little squirrel paws.
I am the watcher.
M/M.
So I guess when Derek went to go deal with it, the renter handed him a letter. It was a short one that had just arrived in the same handwriting as before.
Hold on. I have a point of clarification. So a while ago, it was that there was typos. So that's like telling me like there was a typed letter or like a printed letter. But now you're saying it's handwritten.
I believe I should know.
So were all of them handwritten?
I think they were all
like
handwritten.
Computer generated.
So I think it just was misspellings.
Okay, so grammatical.
Yeah, mostly grammatical errors.
I can't spell, or I have zero grammar ability to save my life. My poor students are like, Miss, so I get it. Like it's a struggle, but okay. So it's more like,
it's more.
Well, that's even better, because if you are even like tracking misspellings and grammar mistakes, and you're using,
they were using handwriting analysis. Yeah.
Damn, like you could figure out a lot of shit on that.
So the letter that had arrived while the renter was there said, "Violent winds and bitter cold to the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria."
Oh,
I know.
You did not go there.
Good
yeah,
sir.
they did. Sir.
Why? Sir. Then that's when you know it's a fucking man, because he's like your wench of a woman.
Wench of a wife.
Oh no, no other woman would say that.
So at this point, the Broadduses are not ever fearful that, they're going to get attacked or something, but they're still dealing with a lot of the after effects and the fear that they lived through. And they do continue to have tenants at 657, but the rent doesn't cover the mortgage. And the kids have dealt with a lot at school because everybody knows the story. And they've been accused of being con artists. So not only did they go through this traumatic experience, but there are a lot of people who have chosen to not believe them. And this beautiful suburban life that they had tried to live out ended up being impossible because of the things that they had gone through.
Didn't they do handwriting analysis on the Broaddus family, and it didn't compare, or it didn't match up with the notes?
It didn't. And so, but what is absolutely crazy about, so of course with the Netflix series, they tried to make things match up a lot more because that's better for television.
Right.
But what I really loved about this is we have no idea who this is, what happened. We know nothing other than what you've heard.
So you're telling me that there is no end to this story?
No, there's not.
This is an open, unsolved case.
An open,
I
unsolved
fucking
case.
hate you right now.
I
I thought you had an ending. I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. So
no.
in the show, though, they really tried to make it where it was very obviously tied to this other person who had lived in the neighborhood, this guy named John Graff, who was based off of a real person named John List, who was a Westfield resident who killed his wife, mother, and children in 1971, and then was gone for 18 years.
I thought the name sounded familiar.
Yeah, so he was a real person. He lived in that neighborhood. He committed these horrible crimes. The real person, John List, he moved to Virginia and was remarried, and he was caught after an episode of America's Most Wanted aired with a projection of what he would look like then. He was caught because of the show.
Yeah.
But not for this particular case. He was caught for the crimes of murdering his family. And while in the show, they really tried to tie John List and the Brodus family close together, the timelines really do not overlap very much. And the guy lived 2 miles away from 657 Boulevard. So there's not a lot of correlation other than there was a killer that lived in this neighborhood at some point.
I wonder if in that house at some point, but no, it sounds like it was a child that lived there, and maybe his parents were like the servants or the maids or the housekeepers or whatever, and they had a dream of living there, and they just got more and more angry as people kept moving in.
Yeah. And so the craziest part, and the thing that's going to make AJ crazy, is that we don't know. And that's the part that I love about, that's the part that I loved about this case from the beginning, is that truth is creepier than fiction.
Do they still get letters now? They're renters?
The last letter that I read about was the one that mentioned the violent winds and bitter cold. But we don't know. And that, ladies, is the story of the Watcher.
Thanks, I hate it.
You've got touch DNA. You've got handwriting analysis. You've got an address. You've got contextual clues. You have language clues. And these police still can't scrape together something or other from New Jersey in this little teeny tiny little pocket of a town.
AJ, there's nothing they could do.
There's nothing I can do.
Because I mean, all the DNA stuff depends on them being in a system somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have genetic genealogy, and trust me, we'll get to it. But if any one of their relatives had ever swabbed their cheek and
Girl,
sent it in,
they're not doing all that work and money for threatening letters.
Oh, that's
so. And the case is, it's not considered active. It's not closed, but it's also
not being worked.
So
okay, we need to put a pin in this one and have a Google alert set up.
Yeah.
For this case, because I'm telling you, they're gonna find something that is
it's
okay.
Like,
oh, well, this is an audio medium. Obviously, we're a podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere you find your podcast, but you can also find us on YouTube as a visual medium. So raise your hand if you have been a victim or a target of stalking.
it was like stalking light.
Still stalking.
Stalking.
They just broke into my house the one time.
Okay. Yeah, that seems fine.
So, there's a systematic problem here.
Yeah.
And it's really gross, and I'm very angry.
It's not great.
Do you remember when you were stalked like through the convention, like while you're on a break trying to eat like nachos all the way back to the booth, and you're like you
love
go
getting
back,
filmed by strangers. It's my favorite
and you're like,
ew.
Just like open in public, in front of everybody, and this person is sending letters through the cloak of like nothingness.
I think it's just one of those things where I had an issue with my soldier and her husband, who's also a soldier, and it was, you can't go to her house. He's at the house. You can't talk to her. He keeps like violating all these boundaries and all these orders. And I was losing my shit because I was like, he's going to the house and he's not supposed to be at the house at all. He's going to the house. He's knocking on the door. He's sending pictures of the front of the house to her. And my chain of command was just like, he's not doing anything harmful. It's fine. And I was like, if she ends up dead, I'm not overreacting. And that's how I feel like a lot of this stuff is like with the case with the Watcher. It's like, it's just letters, but then the family, somebody ends up hurt and it's, oh, we had all these precursors and all these signs. Yeah, that you fucking ignored.
Oh God, it's just like,
yeah.
So many things to say. I can't say them all right now. I don't have time. That's another episode.
This makes me happy though, because I like how weird it is. And
you need help.
It's way better that we have no, because like I was like, oh, and then the Scooby-Doo, it was the guy who runs the water slide. Like we don't know.
Yeah, well, and I hope that just like Carly Martinez, I hope that just by us talking about it, talking the truth about it, the true case.
Yeah, it's true case.
Not the fictionalized stuff, but just like the facts about the case, that somebody might hear it, somebody might see it, somebody might say something.
Can you imagine in like 5, 10, 20 years, somebody's going through their grandparents' attic to like clean out the house and they find like draft letters like, oh, it was Nana.
Jesus. It was Nana's. Get out of here.
I think it's interesting because nobody got hurt, like physically hurt. That family had to have suffered emotionally, but they got out.
Severe trauma.
I feel like they're going to be, hopefully they can recoup some of their losses with the Netflix thing. That's still so creepy.
It's very creepy.
Don't target kids. Don't be a dick.
No, don't be a dick.
Just don't be an asshole.
But yeah,
that's the lesson. Don't be an asshole. Don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole. Don't be either one of those appendages.
But you guys, this is my first like one case where it wasn't with other stuff. So I'm very
You did such a great job, Sunny.
Thanks.
Snaps.
Yay.
Well,
we love you.
Thanks for riding with us through that roller coaster of
that was horrific.
That was so fucking creepy. We should have did that one for spooky season. That was so weird.
I wanted to. Everything got all caught up. So
yeah. Well, in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast. You can email us at bourbonwineandtruecrime@yahoo.com. Please leave us a nice review. Tell all of your friends about how amazing and likable we are. And
if you have any comments or questions or topics you'd like us to talk about, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Until next time. Bye.